Hi everyone, welcome to our next week of engineering. This week we are going to use the magnet on the robot to pick up and place some little discs. So let's get to it. Go ahead, we're going to go to vr.vex.com and we're going to open up our playground. This week our required playground is going to be Disk Mover. Let that load up. So the idea here on Disk Mover is to move the colored disks back into their colored square, and to do that with the fewest number of programming blocks that we possibly can. All right, so let's take a look at this and see if we can think through a structure. So one thing I noticed is there's 3 routes and each one is exactly the same with just a different color. So if we can create code for picking up these 3, we might be able to then just say scooch over to the right some and then repeat that exact same code for this. So I'm imagining a repeat loop for this one and this one. Now each repeat loop is going to change the color from blue to red to green when we go to identify key blocks. So that's something to think of. So there'll be a loop there that'll repeat 3 times. And then inside that there are 3 things to pick up. So to me, that feels like another repeat loop inside that with 3 repeats for each one of those, and then repeat it each time for these. So let's start building. First thing I'm going to do is, like I always do, is I'm going to step up the velocity for the drive and the turn velocity, both to 100%. It'll just save us time when we're going to test everything. So that's the first thing. The next thing I want to do is I want to drive forward until I can see this blue dot. So I'm just going to do a drive forward command. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, and I'm going to do a wait until command on this one. So I'm going to wait until the down sensor, because we look on this, these are little discs on the floor. So we'll use the down sensor for this one for sure. So I'm going to come down here to this light blue one and say the front, not near, detects. And instead of front eye, I'm going to say the down eye, and I want to detect blue to start with. Now what I'm wondering is if it can see this blue rectangle. So what I'm going to do is just do a stop driving. I'm kind of curious when it's going to stop driving. Is it going to stop driving on the square, or is it going to stop driving when it hits this first blue circle? Let's see what happens. Okay, great. So indeed it ignores the color of the square and drives right up to our good friend the little dot. So we'll get rid of that stop driving and keep building our code. So the question is, what should it do when it gets here? Well, we want to pick this thing up, and to do that we're going to energize the magnet. And there's 2 options here. Magnet's only one option. There's 2 objects here, boost and drop. Boost is for picking stuff up. Dropping is for letting it go. And actually, I'm going to leave that stop in there because I think this might actually, let's just try it real quick. I think this might actually just drive right past it because we've never told it to stop. Yeah. Okay. You can see it picked up the second one because the boost came on early. So I think we're going to do a, you know what we may even do is we're going to turn the boost on, turn the magnet on right after we start driving forward. That way it's always ready to grab something. And then when the down eye sees blue, let's say stop driving. And then let's turn to a heading. I'm going to turn to south, and south in this case is 180, so down is south is 180 degrees. So turn to a heading at 180 degrees, and now we need to drive back. But here's the difference. Here's the thing: when we drive back, we don't know how far we are because we could be at this one, or this one. So on this one, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks, 4 of these grid spacings. Now, how big is each grid spacing? I think it's 200, but let's find out real quick. I'm going to move this out of the way just to find out what drive forward for 200 does. So I'm going to reset, play. Yeah, so it looks like each block is 200. So instead of having to do that math in my head to figure out how many blocks I'm going to do something a little tricky that coders do all the time. I'm going to build a quick equation for that. So far, here's what we've gotten. We drive up, magnets on, picked it up, turned around. Now we need to drive back. So back is 1, 2, 3, let's say 4 back. And we said each one's 200, so I'm going to say drive forward for 200. Now in my head I could do like 4 times 200 and do 800 to get back. But instead of doing that, because I can play with this more later, it's more flexible, I'm going to put this multiplication in there. I'm going to create a variable called grid. Okay. And that's the size of each grid block. And then I'm going to set my variable up here. I'm going to say set grid to 200. That tells me that each grid is 200 millimeters across. And I'm going to say drive forward for 4 grids. Okay. And then let's see what that does. So go forward till you see blue, grab it, turn around, drive forward for 4, and it stops. Perfect. Now what I can do is use one of these energized magnets, and instead of boost, I can put on here, get rid of all this other nonsense, I can put on here that I'm just going to drop the magnet. Okay. And now I need to, once I drop it, I need to turn around and go grab the next one, which, yeah, you still need to turn around. So let's do a turn to heading, and this is we're going to be going north here, and so I'm going to say turn to heading of 0 degrees, and let's see what happens. Test this out. Picked it up, go back, drop it off. Did it just? I think it just hit it. Hang on, let's try something. Well, let's loop. So once we're here, we're ready to actually go back and find the next one, which means we're ready to go back to this drive forward command, energize the magnet, and keep going till you see blue. So let's come up here to, let's go to our controls and grab a repeat for a certain number of times. Put it right above there. So the drive forward's in there too. And now let's repeat that, see what happens. I'm a little worried because it looked like we hit that puck as we turned around, which, yeah, I think we did. Might knock us off course. Oh, that's interesting. So we're able to pick all 3 of them up, but they're all coming back the same 4 distance. So what we need to do is the first time, let's refresh, the first time needs to come back 1, 2, 3, 4 places. The next one needs to come back 6. And then the next one needs to come back 8. So we need to be able to change this number from 4 to 6 to 8. So we got to change a number, we got to make a variable. So let's do this. Make a variable, let's call this one, I don't know, disk. So the K or a C, disk K, disk count. Okay. Or maybe call it grid count. I don't know. It's whatever you want to call it. What it is, it's the number of grids you have to do to get back each time, because it's changing each time. You have to change it each time. So I'm going to call it grid count. And I'm going to put grid count in where the 4 is. And then I'm going to set grid count up here. I'm going to set grid count to 4 to start with. That'll give us our first time will be 4 in here. 4 times 200 is 800. And then its second time around, it's still going to be 4. So we need to change grid by 2 each time. That way when it hits here, it'll turn to 6. Go in here is 6 times 200. And then here again, 8 times 200. Let's try this. Boom, snatches it, turns around, drops it off. Oh, I think we still hit that blue disc. Oh, I see what I did wrong. You're at home probably thinking, Mr. Ozzy, you idiot, I just watched that for no reason. Yeah, so this should be grid count, right? Let's refresh, try that again. My apologies. Boom. Perfect. I'm going to watch it from an angle, see if we can see what happens. Yeah, you can see it knocking it out of the way there. But it works. All right, so once we've gotten that done, we just need to drive our robot over to here. So a grid count of so many, although it's not really centered anymore. You know what I'm really worried about? Is that, yeah, you can see it's not where it's supposed to be. So here's what I'm worried about. When we come back and we hit these discs, I think it's knocking the robot off center a little bit. Notice how it's perfectly centered right now? Let's see what happens when we do this again. I think hitting, it's actually showing up as colliding with the disc. See how off center we are? That's a problem. So it works on these first couple blue ones, but look how we're even more off center now. My guess is by the time we get the red ones done, we won't be anywhere close to where we're supposed to be. See how far off we are now? So we're going to need to fix that first. So let's go back. Let's say that when we drop it off, instead of turning on top of it, we drop it off and then we back up a little bit first. So let's see where that is. So this is drop off and then turn to heading north or 0 degrees. Before we do that, let's back up a little bit. So let's say drive this one forward, but we'll say backwards. So drop it and then drive backwards for 1 grid. I'm going to throw a grid in there. You could leave it as 200, but it's kind of fun to have it. I think it might be nice to have it flow through. So let's try that. We'll see if we can stay centered. Okay, so far so good. Boom, backs up a little bit. I mean, we lost a little bit, but much less than we did before. And this one looks pretty centered. And yeah, that's staying right on. You can see how really just right on we are with that. Boom. Okay. So your task now is, I've helped you kind of build in the detail here. Your task is moving your robot over to the right, putting another, so that those two like move it to the right and then turn, face this direction. It's going to go right down here outside this loop. So after it does the 3 pickup and drop offs, it comes down here and it moves to the right a few squares and then turns left, so it's ready to go, facing north. And then it's just another repeat loop after those 2 blocks that repeats it through this. The tricky thing is, it says blue here. So you're going to have to think of a way to build in 3 if-then statements and another counter variable that's going to count how many times, how many colors it's gone through. So you need a counter variable, and well, let's call it color count. We'll just make one real quick. Color count. So whenever color count, and let's set color count to start with. Let's start at 1. And let's come up here and grab an if-then statement and say if let's do an equals to. So if the variable color count is equal to 1, then we want blue to be working. So I'm going to grab this. We want this to run. Throw that away. I just want this one bit. So if color count is equal to 1, then look for blue. I'm going to pop that right in there. I'm going to get rid of this one. It's already above there. Yep, delete 2 blocks. Now this should run exactly the same as before. Awesome. And then what you can do with this now, though, is you can, once you're outside of this and you've done your move over to the right and turn back to the left or turn back north, you can come down here and say, repeat this back around and then have a increase color count by 1 and then say if color count is 2, then go red. If it's 3, then go green. And you can repeat just this loop for all 3 of these lanes instead of having to copy and paste and build a new one. It is critically important for coders to be able to reuse sections of their code using loops and not just copy and paste huge sections of their code, making things incredibly complicated. Last thing I'm going to do now is just go through and put some comments in here. So this one is, so this stops the robot. Identifies colored disk. And, oh, I'm screaming at you. Identifies colored disk and stops the robot. Awesome. And then here's another thing. Turns around. And then here is one. Drives back to square. Drives back to colored square. Here. Drops disk. Then here, I'm going to definitely get this one because it's going to be reverses to avoid driving over disk. That'll remind me why I did that little weird little thing right there. Okay, and then it sets back up and goes again. And now, so you need to have a little bit to the left, a little bit to the drive to the right, turn left, and then repeat that loop. Try that, give it a shot. You need one more loop there. Best of luck to you. When you get this done, go ahead and, before we do that, go ahead and send me a screenshot of this. It'll have all the disks over here. If you miss a disk or two, I wouldn't be too upset. Every once in a while it runs funky and it'll drop a disk. Life isn't perfect. And yeah, that's it. Enjoy your week.